So now it's now for the English. Welcome at the 61st Krakow Film Festival. We are talking today, I'm talking today with Tommy Gulliksen, the director of War of Art, which is part of the program Focus on Norway, where we screen the best, the most interesting films from Northern Scandinavia. I'm really happy to have you here. I wish we had a chance to talk in Krakow, but having this opportunity to discuss your film, it's always something great for the audiences. And I said also in Polish that I really hope that our conversation is gonna add something to the film that you gave us for the festival and that we could share with the audience. And I always wanted to ask this question to somebody, but I never had the chance to talk to a person. How many times have you been to Northern Korea? I never met a person who's been there. So for me, it's just like amazing that I have a chance to talk to you, and you've been there 3 times.
Yes.
Wow. And for like, what's the stretch of time? Like, when was the first time? And if you still remember, and I think that it's one of those things that you never forget, what was your impression when you went there for the first time? And was it for the film already, or what's the story?
Yeah, I was there, first time was in May 2015, and that was kind of a research trip. I was going there with Morten, one of the main characters in the film, and it was actually when we shot the first scene in the film, where he's actually doing the negotiations and striking the deal for being allowed, to do the DMC Academy. So that was the first time, and I'm glad I did it as a research trip, because it's like the first time you go there, it's so overwhelming and it's so different, and you can't really prepare in any way because it's so different from anywhere else in the world. And actually, I think as a filmmaker, it's very difficult to work there the first time, because on a personal level, you are being challenged all the time, and you really need to kind of learn the country and how you behave and how you react to that environment before you can actually start working. So I was glad going there in May for a research trip. Mm-hmm. And then I went back in August with Slovenian rock band called Laibach.
I think the film, actually. Yeah, I remember the film was screened in Poland for New Horizons Festival, and Morten was there. Cool. Yeah, that was really intense.
Yeah, really intense. So that film was called Liberation Day, and we shot that in August 2015. So that was the second time, and then the third time was actually then in 2017 when we shot War of Art, and that's the last time for now.
For now.
Yeah.
There's this part of the story also. So can you just say, because that's really interesting what you said, that it's different to go there as a person and then go as a filmmaker. So how would you describe that two kinds of experiences that you have with the country?
It's like, I think the first time you're there, for example, just the images, like you see the grand portraits of the Kims, like in every building, and then you have the statues and a lot of the monuments, and it can be a bit scary, frightening, and it's also kind of overwhelming. And then all the things that you have been preparing for because you read about it, you've seen films and footage, and then you're there, and it actually, you kind of have to play a role, and you have to put on a mask and be someone else, because it's a society where you're challenged a lot, and you have to really be very careful about what you say and how what you do, and of course everything you do is being monitored, and there are some very strict rules. So in a way, it's very hard to relax, and you're exhausted when you leave there. And of course, you have a lot of prejudice. It's impossible to go there without a lot of prejudice, and I think it's also very important that you realize that all that prejudice is actually affecting you as well, and that you might be also interpreting a lot of things in a wrong way. Mm-hmm. And at least on my first and second trip, I think I learned a lot about how to make film there, because there were things that I maybe judged to be censorship, or maybe just being like really difficult with me. And then maybe on the third trip, I kind of cracked some of the codes that I think made it possible to get more access and film more than we did on the first trips. And that had to do with me, actually, because I had to figure out how to communicate with them. I had to try to figure out how they were thinking, what they were fearing, because they had a lot of prejudice towards me as well. And I think, we had a lot more trust the third time. And I really experienced that they appreciate when you come back, because they experience a lot of people just coming once, and they might be polite and they might be kind in a way, but then they go back and they kind of do a very bad story or a film or something and portray them in a very bad way, because they're never coming back. But when you come back, they kind of say, okay, this is a trustworthy person, and you face them, and that meant a lot. So there wasn't strange things, like very simple things. But for example, they were outside the hotel one evening. It was like really beautiful late summer warm sun. It was just setting, and there were a lot of kids outside, and they were playing volleyball, having a really nice time, and they were just being kids, and the atmosphere was really chill. And I said, oh, I really want to film that, because this is something very different from what we're used to seeing. And I asked the people from the Committee of Culture, can we please film those kids playing volleyball? Which is like a fair request from a filmmaker. And then they just disappeared for 40, 50 minutes. And they were discussing it in the back room. And I was like, okay, we're losing the light, the sun is setting, they're breaking. Yeah, we're losing it. And then they came back and they said, yes, we've arranged so that you can film the national volleyball team on Tuesday. And that was like, okay, what? And they were, of course, thinking he wants to film volleyball. So we want to show him the best possible volleyball in North Korea. And what I should have asked them for, can we please film those kids chilling, having a nice evening, and just being kids? Because probably they would have allowed me, no problem. But since I was inaccurate in what I actually wanted to film, they rejected, and then they come up with another proposition. I think wasn't just in good intentions, but we were just having some kind of bad communications going.
It's an amazing example about how to communicate what you really need, what you really want, when the codes of language and behavior are so strict. Because what I got from the film, apart of many, many things, and we're going to discuss it in a moment, it's like that you really need to be able to say the things that they're going to understand what's your plan with that. And I guess this codified way of living and talking and everything is something really foreign for us as people who live here in the West and don't have the experience as people who live there have. Yeah, that's how it felt for me. But you started to say like that when you talked that when you arrived there, you seen those big portraits and those streets. And what was my experience with looking at the film, and of course, I've seen Liberation Day, so it wasn't my first experience with seeing the shots of Northern Korea. But the thing that is always out there, whenever you see the footage from this country, for me, it looks like a film set. That you have those, buildings and everything is so perfect, and people are walking, and it feels like somebody directs them. Is it only the feeling that I have when I watch the film, or is it a bit like that? That because there is this feeling that somebody said like, and action, and then you like come with a bus and you get out, and there's everything, the life is going around, but it really feels like a facade that there's, I don't know, but maybe I'm just prejudiced also. What do you think about what I just said?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's a very visual city. So it looks like Instagram will, or looks like something that is made for the purpose of photography, and that's just their style, and it's quite a it has the features of a big city, but not that many people live there, and they don't have that many cars, so kind of it feels a bit empty. So when it's like a film set with too few actors and extras and cars, so you kind of have that film feeling. I totally get what you're saying, and I think when you go there, you have that prejudice that everything is being arranged and all people are acting, and then you come there and you just realize that they have so much problem just organizing the simplest thing, that for them to actually put on a big show for everyone would be like totally impossible. But they have like routes in the city. It's like where you're being taken by bus everywhere. Even if you're just going like 200 meters, they take you by bus. They don't want you walking around. And when you go around a lot in bus during those, maybe let's say you're there 10 days, 2 weeks, of course you travel a lot by bus, and then after a while you realize that they have certain paths that are going. They're always driving those streets, even though it's not the fastest, shortest route, because they don't want to take you through some neighborhoods and some areas of the city. And so in a way they are very specific about what they want to show you and in what condition. And they have like this, and some of it has to do with culture, because they are very obsessed with things being beautiful and perfect. So in case if they were decorating or something, they cover everything up, because they don't want to show anything until it's perfect and the finished product. So and then of course they have some things that they don't want publicity about, of course. But there is a strange feeling, and I think it was probably the third time we were there. We were allowed to go on evening strolls by ourselves, and then we could just go wherever we would like. Of course, I think people were following us or keeping an eye with us, but we could go wherever we wanted, and then you can see people just living a normal life, taking evening strolls, playing table tennis, fishing in the river, or eating ice cream, and that feels good as well, because of course it's a very special regime. It's very, very different from I think what we would expect in Europe, but to a certain extent, life is life. In a way, it's they have beautiful sunsets. They have spare time that they can fill with things they like to do. They can spend times with their friends and family, and there is to a certain degree a normal life. And what maybe surprised me most about going to North Korea all the 3 times is that I don't get the impression that the people are afraid of the regime. They're not afraid of the leadership. It's not like you see a people that is going around frightened, like I've seen in other parts of the world. So in a way, they are in a very, very strict totalitarian regime, and there are rules, and they are very, very strict, and the consequences might be, very serious. But in a way, they are not. I think, Morten has also described it as the way of abused children, the relationship they might have to their parents, that the parents can show them abuse, but also love in a way, and that they have a certain degree of trust. And so you can actually see people going around whistling on the streets, and not
in Northern Korea.
Yeah, not looking.
You wouldn't have thought about that, right? It's
no, you expect to see robots, robots going to work, going back, and looking down and being like very.
Or just people crying in the street whenever they see you, because they are like, take us away from here. But probably that wouldn't happen, because that could be really dangerous for them. So it's really complicated world to visit and to even think about. But you mentioned Morten, and I know that he has a bigger story. We know that also from Liberation Day. We also know that from the beginning of the film, when he talks about his ideas how to try to like build a bridge between our culture and I mean like European Western culture and this closed community of Northern Korea. But tell us a bit about, because he's also a director, you are also a director. How did you work together? What's the you know, what's your idea when you shot this film with him to make him a character? But is he also like shaping the, because he's the innovator of DMZ Academy, so there's like this strong, you know, strong character and strong person within the story. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it was important for me. The first time I was invited to go there with Morten, and he was like the gate opener to North Korea. And for me also the motivation to actually go there and make a film was always that I needed to bring the story in a way. I needed to bring the story and the characters, because otherwise it's very difficult to work there. Because you have to have some elements that you can control. And since we brought a lot of characters and we brought a story that was or kind of a narrative that was going to unfold, I knew that I was able to film and document something that was authentic, and that we could control that in a way that we can control that it was authentic. Just going to North Korea with a camera, you probably will meet a lot of they will arrange everything for you. And I think not in just like I told you earlier that it's bad intentions or they're trying to just to fool you, but some good intentions behind it as well, but it will turn out disastrous. So I knew that if we could go there with those elements, we could and try to secure some conditions that we were able to film freely in some areas. Like in Liberation Day, we were able to move totally freely and film whatever we wanted to inside the venue, the concert hall. It was like working anywhere, like in Norway or Poland or the US. We could work totally freely. And here as well, in some of the areas, especially inside, we could work as normal. And Morten, of course, is DMZ Academy is his project. As an artistic leader, that's his project. And we wanted to observe that project. So it's not, it's the film and DMZ Academy is two very different. I didn't choose the artists. I didn't make the program, he did. And of course, he's a strong character. And in Liberation Day, we cooperated. Like he was the main character, and I was also directing and filming. But in this film, we, it was crucial that we were able to observe it from the outside, and that the film could be successful even though the project wasn't. And there is a difference there. And I think his role and his artistic project is very interesting. And also his relations to the other artists are very interesting. There are a lot of things happening there. Some of it you have to cut away from the film because it's very complex. He's been there 18 times, and of course his relationship with the committee has been going on for a long time. That was also his last trip. So there were a lot of things going on, but I wanted to focus on actually the meeting between the international artist and the local artist and the local committee of culture, because that to me was the most precious and authentic processes, and those people meeting on a human and artistic level. That was what we're actually looking for.
But did you have to show the footage to the people, the coordinators? I mean, like they had to like put the stamp on the film because we here can see it. How does that work? No?
Actually, I've been there 3 times. They have never ever checked anything going out. Nothing in the airport, nothing. But going in, they check everything. So each time we've landed there in Pyongyang, in the baggage claim, the customs, they go through your computer, they go through your phone, they go through all your memory cards, hard drives, everything going in. They also look through your magazine, your book, and because they, it seems to me that they are more concerned about us contaminating the people than to, bring some bad publicity out to the rest of the world. I don't think they care about bad publicity in a way. I think they that's a part of their strategy, is to be the baddest guy in the world. And they don't care about that too much, but they really care about contaminating the people. So no interfering. I've had some email contacts. I also had the feeling that they understood what we were doing. Every time I've been there, I met people who are quite progressive, and they understand what we are making. And then they understand that also the way that North Korea is being perceived especially in the West, they understand that. A lot of these people that we meet have actually been to Norway, they've been to Europe several times, and they kind of understand the way it works, and they're fine with it.
That's really interesting. But I need to ask you, because there are at least few moments in the film, those conversations, they are not always about art, but sometimes they are about, like the way we live or the way we live. I mean, either the people from Northern Korea or people from Europe, we have this conversation of Quentin with the coordinator, or Kathy with the same coordinator, and they are talking about Ireland, or Quentin is talking about his experience as the person coming from also Asia, and like having the experience culturally. And I, as a viewer, I had this feeling that something is like tinily breaking, that there is like kind of a breakthrough, and that the communication is possible. Was that also the thing that you felt when you were there hearing what they were talking about? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I think you're right. And I think, that's also been the project of Morten. I think, that you are planting these small seeds. And, every time you talk to a person, you affect that person in a way, bad way or a good way or a neutral way, but it's impossible not to get affected. And often when we in the group spoke about the North Koreans that we got to know or met, we often discussed, is he a true believer? Is she a true believer? Or are they just faking? Because some of them are faking, and others, I believe, are true believers. And I think, discussing with them is a way to find out, and it's also a way to try to affect them. And I think, living in that country, being a non-believer and being critical is a living hell. It's it must be terrible, and I feel so sorry for those who are true believers and actually think that they live in the best place in the world. I think, good on them. I don't want to ruin that illusion either. So, but I think this is the beautiful thing about people meeting people. It's actually quite hard to hate each other, or to think that it's a good idea to start a war or nuke each other's countries. It's you kind of relate in a way, and it's really interesting. Of course, the level of knowledge about our world is really low, but then you also have to admit that our knowledge about their life is quite low. And I've been raised as a Democrat. I'm a democratic person in Norway, and to me that is also like a religion. I went, to the military, swearing to protect that democracy. So in a way, you have to also be truthful to yourself and say that, I also have really, really strong beliefs. And to me, a democracy is the only way to rule a country. But I remember first time going there, I traveled a lot of the country, all the way down to the South Korean border. I saw a lot of also the countryside, which is really poor, I have to say. But in a way, it was organized. Like you don't get the feeling that they are totally unfair to the people. Like that there are a lot of rich people and a lot of really, really poor. I think they try to the way that I think they're quite fair in the way that they just share their values and food. And then, a couple of weeks later, I went to Chennai in India, which is the world's largest democracy.
Mhm.
And right next to my hotel, there were families living under a bridge. And, I was asking myself, their right to vote, what does it actually give them? How much social mobility are they being given by their democracy? And then it kind of challenged me in a way that, maybe we don't always have the answers for everyone everywhere, even though I would always choose democracy.
Mhm.
I think that there are certain things that they have achieved, and you cannot deny that, you cannot hide that. And I think there are some people that are truly happy in that country. And to me, there are. It's maybe at the second or third time I actually kind of also cracked the code about how to approach and view North Korea, because I was looking at it as a state, as a society, like Poland or Norway or France. But then I realized that that's the wrong, maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it. To me, it was more like a religious cult. If you
Mhm.
approach it as a religious cult, then you understand it much more easily, because then you have the leader, and then you have the way of life that they appreciate, even though they know that we think it's crazy. So, like, for example, and it's not like the lack of information, because they know a lot about the rest of the world. They know that there might be technological or prosperous nations, but in a way, you have religious people. You have people in the Scientology church that live in a city. They work with you, they're your colleague, and they know that you think they're crazy believing in it, but still they do. And
Yeah.
it's not the lack of information, they choose to. And when I just, third time, I said, these people, that's also why I use the term true believer, because
Mhm.
it's not good to be in a religious cult if you don't believe.
Yeah.
And there will
If
also be
you
consequences if
fell
you
on
want to
earth.
leave it or break out. But you also have to kind of admit, even though I'm not that a religious person, that religion and being in a religious community can be really good for a lot of people. Of course, North Korea is 25 million people. There's a really, really big community. But to me, it's much more easier to look at them as a religious society who wants to be left alone, really.
Mhm. But what about the idea of Morten that actually through art, through this kind of exchanges, or even just attempting to have like a real cultural exchange, you can do much more than through the sanctions and through the, like using the political international tools that we do for 50 years, more even like more than 50 years already. And this doesn't work. So I remember when he's like, so do you have any other idea? And
Yeah.
seems that he has some kind of an idea. What do you think about this idea that art can be this thing that can really build this bridge?
I think so, to a certain degree, because the sanctions are only playing into the hands of
Mhm.
the leadership, because it's making it so easy for them to make this narrative that the West and the international community is just trying to destroy them, and that they are the evil forces. And to a certain degree, they're right. A lot of their poverty and famine is because of the sanctions.
Hmm.
So I think that's just playing into the wrong hands. Art, I think, is, since art and culture is so important in the North Korean society, they really put it into the center of their community. It's also where they have a vulnerability. It's their weakness, because so much of their state narrative and the building of a culture is around art. And if you try, and of course it also needs to be feel good, like you see in the film, and if you challenge that in a way, it kind of implodes.
Mhm.
And that's why Morten is also talking about raging within the machine,
Yeah.
not against the machine.
Mhm.
And of course, it's through culture you are being affected, not like a rule or a law, but it's you don't notice it, because it's
Mhm.
changes you very slowly. And I think, it's very interesting to see what happened to, for example, all those people we met, in 10 or 15 or 20 years, like those young people in the committee probably will be among the leadership and the elite in 10 years. And I think a lot of those relationships and having those meetings and those memories, I think they will carry it with them. I think it might change the way they act. And it's like when you had during the Cold War, you had the student exchange between the Soviets and USA. And of course, they were always saying, why are we taking exchange students from the Soviet Union? Because obviously they're going to send spies. And they did. Of course, they sent spies. Both of them did. But those spies also lived in the community. And then they went back, and then they rose to even higher ranks. And when they were in the elite, they had all those experiences. And that also affected them in a way. You cannot just wash it off. And I think that makes better people, better leaders. They will make better decisions. And in a way, also in a community, you need graffiti. At some point, you will need graffiti if you want to challenge the power. And in North Korea, there is no such thing as graffiti. So it's like at 0.0. And it's all like very, very kind and non-provoking art at the moment. And I think they if you plant the idea that they can actually make something else and try to be a little more edgy, I think that will also slowly change their culture in a more like a macro way. But also
especially meeting Jean Valnoir is going to change them forever, because he's such a strong character with so subversive and provocative ideas that's going to affect them for sure. But tell me, because we have this DMZ Academy, and if there was something like DMZ Film Academy, you think that would be also possible idea to implement that for you, for example, you, Morten, and some of the filmmakers coming from Europe, working with the filmmakers in Northern Korea and making a film together? What do you think about this kind of idea?
That would be really cool. I would love that. I still have a dream to go back there and show the film, and just also maybe in a film school or university or whatever. And to me, also a big part of that would be what kind of film, what part of the film would be unacceptable to them?
Yeah.
Do we need to cut away something? What would that be? And the whole negotiation about that, because I think, of course, when Jean shows his ass, that would be totally unacceptable. But I think they would accept a lot of it, actually. And you would be surprised by the standards of some of the progressive minds there. And that is also like the kind of philosophical question. If there are progressive people behind that wall, should we just, leave them in the dark? Or should we try to communicate with them, try to give them something to work with, strengthen them? Or should we just, say, sorry, you were born in the wrong country in the world and, bad luck, but we can't do anything for you?
That's super valid question, and I don't think we're gonna find better ending to our conversation than this, because we already talked to ourselves. Now it's time to talk to somebody who thinks or lives in a different way. And I think it's a big lesson for everybody in every country, because even in your country, there are people that sometimes it's difficult to communicate with, and you would like to cross them somewhere behind the wall or something like that. So thank you for this lesson. And if there's going to be DMZ Film Academy, I keep my fingers crossed, so we're going to have a chance to watch the film if it's going to be prepared and happen for you. Good luck with everything that you're working on. Cinemas are opening. The life is also coming back for Norway as it is in Poland. So good luck with your projects, and I hope to see you one day in Krakow, maybe to talk about your next project.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.